And I'm so happy to be here because I love the wellness industry. I think what you guys do is so important. I was sharing with Krista, you guys, before we jumped on that my daughter has type 1 diabetes. I have 2 autoimmune diseases. I am really meticulous about how I eat. For the most part, I try really just to be careful, not like I'm perfect, but just to be aware of what happens to our bodies given the food we put in.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me for another episode here at Female Empowered. I'm actually really excited today to speak to Sarah Walton, who has her own podcast, which I love the name of, by the way, Game On Girlfriend. And I love that you have your daughter do the intro. I think it was when I first listened to it, I was like, this is so cool. I love that she has her daughter on it. So I'm going to read her bio, because if not, I'll be all over the place. But then I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, because the written word is just kind of boring a little bit. And I know that you have a lot more to share. So Sarah Walton, a business mentor who's been featured on the Today Show, speaks at women's conferences all over the world, and has helped hundreds of women start and grow businesses they love, which I love that. So she honed her business building skills working with startups and large corporations, where she managed a P&L worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and is the host of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. She's known for her weekly Coffee with Coach streaming video conversations on Monday mornings, so be sure to check those out. Sarah speaks across the nation and has become the go-to source of inspiration, no-nonsense teaching, and practical integration for women in business, ultimately putting more money in the hands of more women, which I believe puts more money in the hands of our community. So I just believe when we empower women with money, we do different things with money. And that's a total generalization. I don't want to say that men don't. I'm just saying I think that women do things differently with money. One of the reasons I wanted to bring Sarah on was because I did listen. I'm very picky about who I have on my podcast, only because we have such limited time anyways. And like, to have people on that are just not really aligning with the people I speak with is just a waste of everyone's time. But I listened to your podcast a bunch of times, and I just love how you're kind of a straight shooter too. And most of my audience just doesn't like the whole BS kind of stuff. So straight shooting is where it's at. And so why don't you take a moment and you give us like who you really are. You can talk about your family if you want. I know you're a mom too. And then we'll get into the questions.
Well, okay. Krista, thank you. First of all, that was like the best introduction ever. I was like, there's so much I want to respond to, but I have to be quiet for a minute. No, I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for the compliments about the podcast. You know, one of the things I'm most proud of in my business, when I really embraced the idea that I'm an intuitive business coach, people were like, what is it? I'm like, every person I work with, we do something different. I can't shove people down a factory line. And when I really started to own that, people would come up to me and say, God, I feel like I know you. And I was like, oh, there we go. Now we're talking, because like business has been so, I want to say kind of hidden and sneaky and broified, as I like to say, that like, it's like, quote unquote, normal people can't do it, right? It's for the select few who like know how to sell you and like an ice cube to like an Eskimo, all that crazy garbage we hear all the time. That is so weird. And so I love that we're going to be straight shooting today and just talking about what actually matters. And I'm so happy to be here because I love the wellness industry. I think what you guys do is so important. I was sharing with Krista, you guys, before we jumped on that my daughter has type 1 diabetes. I have 2 autoimmune diseases. I am really meticulous about how I eat. For the most part, I try really just to be careful, not like I'm perfect, but just to be aware of what happens to our bodies given the food we put in it. And I don't think I've had a single client ever where health didn't become an issue at one point or another, because if you are running a business and you get sick, or you start feeling crappy, or the inflammation's out of control, or you have daily headaches, or you can't focus, you've got a pretty big problem. And I think so often we take our health for granted. So anytime I can support this community in getting out there and making a boatload of money, because you all deserve it, that is a good thing. That is not a bad thing. And we need money in the hands of people who understand our health and our bodies. I think that's a really big missing conversation in our world right now. And so anything I can do to support you guys in saying that, I will do.
That's awesome.
So that's my backdrop.
That's awesome. I mean, I think a total aside too, I've shared this before. I have an undiagnosed autoimmune disease. I don't really know what it is, but same thing. I changed my eating habit. It started with a blog probably like 5 or 6 years ago. That was, I called it Confessions of a Skinny Fat Girl. Cause like I'm thin, but my insides were crap. And over the course of running the business as a female, as someone who was learning, like I don't have an MBA, which I don't believe is a bad thing anymore, but I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm struggling. I'm a mom. I was just like, and then again, you're right. All this inflammation builds up and it sucks. It sucks. It sucks. So women in business, before they get to this point, it's one of the messages I want to convey to people is we can have the business that we choose to have and can also be profitable for us and can be sustainable. Sorry, I hit my keyboard. Stop doing that. So anyways, I'm so glad that you're here. And that was just like a totally little aside. So can you give us a little like background on you, kind of what you were doing before you went into coaching women in business?
Yeah. So, I mean, my story actually starts way back. When I was very little, I was raised in a little town called Sandy, Utah. The claim to fame in our town is that that's the town Elizabeth Smart was taken from and the town where they shot Big Love. So that's where I grew up. And I was raised incredibly poor, very, very poor, single mom. And when I say poor, I just want you guys to understand, there were times we would have half a jar of honey and half a loaf of bread that my mother had made from scratch. The end, like not an exaggeration. That would be it. And when I was really little, I knew I wanted to dance. I wanted to dance so bad. Like that's all I wanted to do. And it came time to try out for the company dance team at high school. Right. And that was, I was just like, I'd watch these girls forever. And I was so excited. And I did all the Janet Jackson moves. Cause you know, I'm 345 years old, all the Janet Jackson moves and the Paula Abdul chair throwing. I mean, it was like the cool dancing at the time. Right. And I made the team and I was so excited. And we lived in a really tight knit community. People were bringing me roses. People were like, oh my gosh, congratulations. I was like, what just happened? I was so happy. And then I got the letter that talked about the price of the dance costumes and the shoes and the jacket. And I don't know, Krista, have you ever had that moment where you like watch yourself go through something? Do you know what I mean? Like you like lift up and go, she's having an experience right now. That's sort of how it felt, like watching myself read this letter, have my stomach drop through the floor of like, well, I can't, right? It was just awful. And I know this is going to surprise you, but I was very frisky and very like tenacious. And so it was the 80s. So I got a job at the mall. For those of you that don't know what that is, I'm kidding, sort of. Go watch Stranger Things. It's a mall, right? Yeah. So I got a job at the mall, like selling tchotchkes from a cart. And I got my first paycheck and I was so super excited because it was enough to do the deposit, right? So I'd called and we'd kind of worked something out and I could do the deposit. And at the time, I obviously didn't have a bank account. I was only 16. And so I went to the grocery store with my mom to get the check cashed at like one of those customer service desks that don't exist anymore, but were awesome. And as we're walking in, it was me and my younger brother, my younger half brother, and my mom. And my mom says to me, Sarah, the strawberries are on sale. Can we get some? Now, if you are a psychologist, I know your brain just exploded, but that's another conversation. So I think about the dance costume and I think about the strawberries and I'm like, yeah, I could do both. So I go wait in line. I get my cash. I'm so excited. And I go to, the fast checkout line, like, the 10 and under express, and they're not there. My mom and my younger brother aren't there. And I'm like, what? And I walk up and down the aisles and I see them in line with a cart full of groceries. And I know it's a cart full of groceries she can't pay for. And I'm sitting there looking at it. And it is my brother's favorite breakfast cereal. It's some milk. It's a loaf of bread. It's lunch meats for his lunches, the damn strawberries. And I'm standing there with the money in my hand and I'm realizing I can take care of my family or I can take care of my lifelong dream, but I cannot do both. And that was the moment I decided that was a fact, right? So I left Utah. I went to UCLA and got my degree and I moved to New York City. And I made it. I was working in the tech industry. I was working at startups. I was helping people pitch for venture capital, which was just crazy. I'm like, how I did this? I just talked my way into every job. I know you're shocked. And I had a great time. And pretty soon I'm married. I have 2 kids. I'm in this gorgeous glass office. I have a staff I love and adore. I am making a lot of money and I am miserable. Like, tight chest, stomach cramps every morning, awful. And I'm sitting in my office one day. I had this gorgeous ficus tree. I'm watching a leaf fall off the ficus tree and I'm hearing the clock behind me tick away the seconds of my life. And that was the day I remembered the moment in the grocery store. And I was like, oh, I decided I couldn't take care of my family and myself.
Mhm.
And so now I'm taking care of my family and I'm dying.
Mhm.
And that was the day I got up and quit. There was like a Sarah-shaped hole in the wall, right? And it was interesting because in that job, there would always be a line of people out of my office door, right? Not a line, I don't want to exaggerate, 2, 3 people, right?
Mhm.
Waiting for me who were not on my staff. And they were coming in for advice. I want to raise, my team's not listening to me. How could I write better? And I'm like, I just want to do that part. I don't want to do the rest of my job. I just want to do this. And it was like, how do I figure that out? How do I do that? And that is how I got into coaching with all of that business experience behind me, watching how the more senior I became, the fewer women were in the room.
Mhm.
I had the power to hire and fire at will. And I consistently hired pregnant women. Was like, let's go, make sure they have great health insurance, make sure they have a great job to come back to. I mentored as many people as I could. And when it came time for me to quit and I had remembered that moment, it was really an awakening that a 16-year-old had been running my life. And that was a scary thing to recognize. And I don't know how many of you listening can sort of think back in your life where you made really big decisions before your prefrontal cortex was formed.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's like, oh, that's the way life is. And what happened that day in the grocery store is I bought the groceries. I'm going to cry. Another woman, my best friend's mom, found out what had happened and she paid for my dance costumes. And the reason I'm going to cry is in 2019, I held a conference in Salt Lake. It was a Game on Girlfriend conference. And I invited her, and so many people had heard me tell the grocery store story and they knew some woman had bought my costumes, and I got to bring her up in front of everybody and say, by the way, this is the woman who bought my costumes. And she died in 2020. And so it was like I know it was like, that's why I tear up, because it was so extraordinary. And I don't know if any of you listening feel this way in your business. Like, you have your originating stories, what drives you, but sometimes like we tell it so much, or we talk about it in a certain, it's like, God, did that even really happen?
Mhm.
Like it sort of starts to get like
Yes.
that. So to have that come full circle like that, and for her to hear me tell it and to be able to introduce her and thank her, like, forget about it. Like, it was one of the most incredible moments of my life. And it just sort of cemented for me that this is my job. My job is to make sure no woman is ever in the situation my
Yes.
mother was in that day.
Yes.
And no woman is ever in the situation I was in that day. Like, this is a no-fly zone for me. Like, this has got to stop.
Yeah.
Women must have money. We must have
Yes.
access to it. We must learn how to use it. We must learn how to make it. We must learn how to sell. This has got to stop, because I just know if we had more money in the hands of more women, I mean, we're not going to drop bombs on other people's children. I mean, can we just be straight about that?
Yeah.
We might drop food or medicine or
Yeah.
water, but I'm not out for killing some other mother's kids. That's not happening on our watch. And we need to start playing at a bigger game. And that means we need to learn how to get over ourselves, quite
Yeah.
frankly,
Yeah.
and say, I can help you with that. And this is what it costs for me to do that, with like as much security and gorgeous clarity as, the sky is blue and like the trees are green, and this is what my service costs. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and that's it. We've just
Oh.
got to stop. So that's what drives me. You asked, Krista.
Well,
that's the answer.
First of all,
That's
now
what
I
it is.
feel like we're going to be like long lost besties, because I just felt when I was like researching you, I'm like, this person has a lot in common with me. So I'm not going to make this about me, but just really quick, my why is so incredibly similar to your story. My mom was a single mom. There were 3 of us. I was in dance. So I actually danced with Joe and Mia Michaels when I was very little. So if you know, like the dance community, I danced with Joe before he died. And Mia was like, I hope she definitely doesn't listen to this podcast, but she was like a teenager when I was little, like 8 or 9, and she used to torment me because I was like 9. But same thing. I will never forget. I lost a costume during a recital, and I was scared because we couldn't afford the costumes that I had. And my mom had to like work her butt off, and like Joe paid for most of my costumes. Like when I was in volleyball in high school, my mom couldn't, same thing, like getting the letter of like, here is, I was a scholarship kid at a private prep school, and they're like, oh, every girl needs new shoes, and this is what we're going to do. And I was like, how am I going to show this to my mom? Like, she can't afford, she didn't go to college, she worked 2 jobs, same thing. And I had my coach pay for everything for me, and it was like, again, somebody that looked at us and said, not in like a take pity on you way, just like, this person has skill set, and this, they're great people, and they're going to pay for us, right? And so my why in getting into coaching has been, I want to help women create financial independence for themselves and for their children, and possibly even like bring their husbands home so they could work together, or send their kids to college. It's who I hire, things like that. So I have the same thing. Like my mom still to this day, she's retired. She's still to this day, when she sends us, like, she'll send me like it was just my anniversary, something $20 check. And like literally every day she'll text me, did you deposit the check yet? Did you deposit? Because she's like,
she's worried.
She's worried about, she lived paycheck to paycheck for so long that the decision I made when I was 16 was that money is finite. And you only have a certain amount of it. And if I ask you to pay me for my services, I'm taking from you, and you will no longer get that money back. So what I've had to overcome is my money mindset around, just because I ask you to pay for my services, there's more money out there. You are choosing to do that. I'm not taking from you. And that was like a big thing too. And I think there's a lot of money stuff we bring from childhood that we're not even aware of, that shapes how we do business. Right.
There's no question.
Yeah. And I thank you so much for sharing that story. It was making me like tear up a little bit too. Cause like, I remember sitting like on the kitchen, tuna noodle casserole was big in our family. And we had it for like days, like an entire week of like egg noodles and peas and peas,
right? And mayonnaise.
Yes. That would be like in this Tupperware.
Girl,
like,
that was a staple.
That was like a week-long food in this like platter or whatever. So I mean, I feel you, and it shaped who I am now, and me going to college too, and being like, I'm going to have a career. I'm going to be able to support my family and support my mom now. So that's great. So thank you for sharing that. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of women, because I do think some women, I don't know, let me ask you this. I think women, or even people in general, think to be successful, like we have this old archetype of the like Brady Bunch family, like the dad is an architect, right? I'm pretty sure he's an architect. I think so, and he goes, and the wife stays home. Right. And he goes to school, like he's trying to be partner, and he goes to a suit every day, and he's not really home for dinner, and like these kind of things. And I think women are like, well, that's not me, or I can't be that, or I don't have a degree, an MBA. And so do you feel that some women think they can't achieve that because they don't fit what the old archetype used to be, or so they just never imagine that they don't think that's available to them?
I mean, I do think that's an issue for sure. I think especially with our generation, because we didn't see it. We didn't have examples of that. I think the one example we had was Claire Huxtable, which was amazing. Yeah, right. I mean, we had that, which was gorgeous. And I remember watching it, right, and being like, wow, that's amazing. She's got a job, I think there's as many humans as there are, or as many reasons why women believe they can't achieve. That being said, I am also a big believer of conditioning, and there's something called societal conditioning. And there is a phenomenon going on, and it's called high functioning codependence. And that is among women. And the phenomenon is this, and it's usually I say high functioning codependence. And if I ever say that in front of a live audience when I'm speaking, everybody goes, that's me. I'm like, I haven't even defined it yet. They're like,
You're
no,
like,
but
I
that's
know
me.
it.
Right?
It sounds
You're
like me for sure.
I have that, right? Yeah. So high functioning, right? Because what we want to understand is if you were born into a female body, right, is we have more connective tissue, like physiologically more connective tissue between the two hemispheres of our brains.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what allows us, like we all joke that, a woman's mind has like 85 tabs open on a browser, right? That's what allows us to do that actually is a physiological difference for us to be able to do that so quickly. And I always joke for anyone who has either a brother or a male significant other, if you ask them to do something, like you can be holding a baby, taking out the garbage, cooking dinner, and be on the phone and say, hey, do you think you could go stir that pot? And they'd be like, but I'm watching TV. Have you ever had that in mind? You're like, what in the actual hell, man? And that is not like to be a jerk. Men do not have that ability. We love them, but that is that incredible direct focus in on one thing that is actually really difficult for us to do, just like it's difficult for them to do what we do. Mm-hmm. And it's why we make great partnerships, is because there's a direct linear focus. Dad goes to work. Mom's taking care of 85,000 things at once. But what happened in that whole context that we all saw, all of that conditioning we all saw, and like I said, we all have different versions of that conditioning. But the underlying rule is your job as a woman is to make sure everyone else is okay and be quiet about how you feel. And that starts very young. It starts with, oh, don't cry. Where's my pretty girl? Mm-hmm. And that BS line we hear, you look so pretty when you smile. It's like, F you, I don't care what you think. What about my feelings? We are taught from such a young age that our feelings, especially if they make anyone uncomfortable, are not welcome. Right? So that's the high functioning, right? Yeah. And then the codependence piece of that is that we get rewarded for this. And every time I hear this, I stop people and I say, I just want you to hear what you just said. And the phrase is, oh my God, she's so great. She's so selfless. Selfless. And I'll stop people and go, I just want you to hear that. And I'll do it a lot. Like if I'm volunteering for school lunch, say, or something like that. Just watch, if a man or a dad shows up, everyone goes crazy. Oh my God, it's so great. He's here. Oh my God. You will have been there every day for 3 months and no one has even noticed. Right. Totally. And that is a sense of societal conditioning. And that's what I'm talking about. So we hear that, we see that in thousands of different ways. We experience that. My feelings don't matter as long as everyone else is okay. That's my job, is to make sure everyone else is okay. We do that to such an extent and then get rewarded for it by being called things like selfless, like that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And then you say to me, but why do women think they can't go have everything they want? It's because we've been told we cannot. We've been told that what we want does not matter. And this phenomenon is talked about. It was founded, the high functioning codependence was coined by a psychologist in New York. Her name's Terry Cole, and she wrote a book called Boundary Boss, which I recommend, especially if you're looking to create your business in a certain way. And it's not so much what you think. It's not, I wish she'd named it something else to be totally transparent, because it's not my favorite title. It sounds a little hard and cold, and it's not. It's actually very warm. And it's very instructive and like super tangible. Like there's so many great examples in that book. And her childhood was so totally rough that to hear how somebody else has created a healthy structural boundary for themselves around emotions is really supportive, I think, and really helpful. So that's my really long answer to your really short question. Is there's thousands of reasons that we go through this, you guys. There's thousands. And I do think it's on all of us to say, hang on a second. Did I actively choose the idea that I can't achieve this?
Yeah.
Or did I like suck that up through the air that I breathe and the ether that says women cannot do that? And I know it sounds archaic, you guys. And you're like, aren't we past this?
No.
And I would say in the United States right now, I think it's pretty clear we're not.
No.
Right?
No. And it's because I think it's so inserted in places that people don't even realize. Like there's another phenomenon called learned helplessness, where people believe that this is their reality. And they have this learned helplessness that like their parents didn't do well, so they're meant to live paycheck to paycheck as well, right? And that's what they expect of themselves. They don't even realize. It's like standing in the rain and not realizing you're getting wet, right? Until someone hands you an umbrella and is like, oh, I wasn't even sure I was getting wet. And I did read this other study this fascinated me. When you talk about that whole, sometimes you can't be what you can't see because you don't know it's available to you. And there's a study that they did where they found these, a mom had a dog. She's a mom dog she got hit by a car and her hind legs were like broken, paralyzed. So she walked with a limp forever. She has a litter of puppies that live with her. Regular, all born regular. They all had a limp. They all walked with a limp because they followed her. And they thought that what she was doing was what they were supposed to do. So it was fascinating to me. Like, this is a physical thing, but it's fascinating when you talk about, conditioning and how people talk to you in school and that whole thing of like, smile. I actually have a bag that says, please stop asking me to smile.
Seriously, man.
People ask me all the time. They're like, are you okay? Why don't you smile more? I'm like, I want to give them the middle finger. I'm like, why don't you smile more?
Well, it's not even that. It's like, why are my emotions of concern to you
right now?
And why do you feel it's okay to tell me that my face makes you uncomfortable?
Totally.
Why is that okay?
So crazy.
And that's kind of what I like about the boundary book, right? Is it's sort of like you start to question things we've sort of taken in. And most women, by the way, and you guys, I'm one of these. I don't want to sound like I'm like, I have this all figured out. Like, this is kind of an ongoing thing. I think we all get to work on it. I think it's going to take the support of each other. By the way, I think it's going to be women supporting women to solve this problem. But I think as we look into this, it's sort of this idea of like, wait a second, I would have said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Right. I would have said that. Why don't you smile more? Oh, I'm sorry. What the heck?
Yeah.
You're sorry because you had a bad day. I don't know what's going on with you. For all I know, someone you love died yesterday. With what business do I come up to you and say, it'd be so cute if you smiled? Like, what is that?
No.
I don't know why we think it's okay to say that to women. And by the way, you would never say it to a man. And I think that's important for us to recognize.
Yeah. And it filters down even to like little things. Again, this is where it becomes so benign. I don't even think people realize it.
Yeah.
My son came home from school one day and he was like, all pissed. And I was like, what's the matter with you? He's like, PE sucks. And I was like, what happened? He's like, we played soccer and the coach gave the girls team, like, every time they scored, they got 2 points instead of 1 point. And I was like, really? Why? He's like, I don't know, girls. And I was like, I'm going to call the school tomorrow.
I think a conversation is warranted here.
I never call school. My kids will be like, Mom, somebody did. I'm like, you're going to have to figure that out. But this one, I was like, because this is the issue. One, you're telling girls that they need extra resources or help. And two, you're telling boys that girls need help.
That's right.
And they can't do it on themselves. I said, it would have been more fair to take kids that are athletic or play sports and kids that are not athletic and don't want to play soccer and split them that way, because just saying girls and boys, and I'm sure the coach didn't think he was doing anything wrong. That's the issue.
Thinking.
He's like, oh, I was doing them a favor, but no, you're not, because you're teaching both the boys and the girls something from this young age.
That's
so
correct.
We could go on and on and
on. Good on you,
sure
Krista.
about this. Love that you did that. But okay, let's get into sales, because I think this is like a big thing. Because the other thing is, I think women, and I was like this for a long time too, I was really uncomfortable about asking for money.
Yeah,
I really was. And it's because I started off in physical therapy and this whole idea of like, I was helping people and people need this. And my husband one time said to me, he's like, you just have to look at, you're just selling yourself. Everyone's selling something. You're selling why they should come to work with you instead of the place down the street. That's it. That's what you're selling. So if you could give, and this is a seriously open-ended question, but like your view on sales, what you think of, we're talking about whether it's product sales, service sales, asking people for money. What's kind of your thought process behind sales? And then we'll get into some specific questions.
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts about sales. So one of the startups I worked at, we were digitizing content for people who had created cassette tapes or maybe had a whole bunch of talks. And one of those people was Marianne Williamson. And if you don't know who she is, that's totally fine. Yeah. Yeah. She wrote that book.
What's
A
your
Return to
greatest
Love.
fear? What's your
Yeah,
greatest fear?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I would listen to her in the recording studio all the time. Now, I am not a student of the Course in Miracles, so I don't pretend that I am, but I do understand the basic theory. And the basic theory is this: there's only two real emotions, right? There's two real sources of our energy in life. One is fear and one is love. And love's job is to bring up fear so you can heal it. I was like, well, that is amazing. And I'd listen to her talks and I had to digitize them and do whatever we had to do to bring all these things into the modern world. And one day I was about to give a talk several years later in the Poconos about money. And I had this thought. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The thought was money is love. And I was like, I don't want to be known as the money is love lady. Can we back that truck up, please? Because no, thank you. But it kept coming. Like I was talking about sales. I'm teaching my thing. I'm doing like, I have a money mindset course, right? Like I'm doing all these. And it just kept coming to me. And what I realized is money's not love, obviously, right? We've seen people try to use it that way. It does not go well, right? Money is not love, but it has that love-like energy in that money will bring up everything you have not healed. And that is why I believe people who get it through the lottery or who get it through something, they get rid of it as fast as they can because they don't want to heal what they're going to have to heal in order to keep it. Because it's an extraordinary amount of energy. I mean, if you get that big, like invoice gets paid by a client and you're like, oh my God, like you can feel that energy. And then what comes up for most people right behind it is, oh my God, what if I can't deliver? Oh my God, what if I do it wrong? Oh my God, what if they think I'm selfish, right? That is a list of all the things you need to heal. Yeah. And I mean, listen to this conversation we've had so far. It's about childhood wounds. It's about all the different ways we've been constructed, right? Like our society is constructed, what a woman is, what a woman can do, what a woman can't do, all these, that all needs to get healed. And so actually allowing money into your life is a really great way to become an incredible human being. So that's number one. Is I have a very different view of money. I think bringing money into our lives is an extraordinary opportunity to grow. And I think that's fantastic. And I love that. So there's that piece. The other piece I believe about money is that money is a magnifying glass, right? So if you're a jack wagon, you get to be a bigger jack wagon. And I think we know a few of those. And if you're amazing, you get to be even more amazing, right? So if we can start to see money through those two lenses of like, this is giving me an opportunity to highlight where I can become a better person, that's incredible. And that has nothing to do with greed. That has nothing to do with being selfish. That's about being the best human being you can be. And I think that's awesome. And then the other piece of it is like that self-trust with the magnifying glass, right? Do you trust yourself? And that's a question I think we all have to kind of grapple with a little bit, especially as you start to grow your business. Do you trust yourself? Do you trust yourself to have a $1 million business if you want? Who are you going to hire? Where are you going to put that money next? Right. And then this goes to what you said earlier. I truly believe money is absolutely infinite. Yep. And for anybody who just balked at that and went, excuse me, please, I'd like you to just look around the room you're in right now. Just take a second, just look around the room you're in right now. And every single thing you can see, like I can see my computer, I have my microphone, I have my lights, I have that painting behind me and a lamp, or all these things. These are all things somebody imagined and then created, and then you paid money for. So as long as you have an imagination, there's money to be made. Like literally, all you have to do is create things people want. And money can be generated at any moment, at any time, anywhere. And the last piece of that, obviously, is understanding what sales is. Yeah. So I see sales as an exchange of love-like energy. You created something. You can help somebody's body. You can help somebody's well-being. And in exchange for that is the love-like energy. So you're helping each other heal. And now it's like this incredible, cohesive, infinite circle of support and love and care. And if you want to buy shoes and bags with it, that's awesome. I think the artists who create shoes and bags are freaking amazing. God love them. That's extraordinary. The work that they do, how hard they work on it. Great. That makes your socks roll up and down. Go for it. Yeah. If you'd rather donate that money to study autoimmune diseases, fan-freaking-tastic. Yeah. I would totally trust more women with more money to be able to do that. And in this infinite chain of money, this is the big myth, right? Money never disappears. It moves. And I love to do this when I'm live with people. I'll get $100 bill and I'll put it to the person on the left in the front row and then say, give it to that person, give it to that person, give it to that person. And they hand it all the way down the end of the row until it comes back to me. And I say, did it lose any value? Did it lose any value? No, not only did it not lose value, it added to every single person who got to touch it. And so the more that we can get that vibe and understand, like your idea, you were taking it from someone. No, you were moving it. right? So when money comes into my business, for example, my daughter's dance teacher works with autistic children on the weekends. I freaking love that guy. He's the best, right? There's nowhere else I'd rather put my money. I love that I get to move that money into that direction. I love that's amazing. That makes me so happy. My husband owns a mortgage company. So when you're paying your mortgage, you're not paying some jackwagon bank. You're making sure other people's kids can go to college and that they can do amazing things. You guys, it never goes anywhere. That is a myth. And that was made up by, God forgive me, white men who wanted to keep it all. Yeah. That is not real. It's not real. And just watch it. And anytime somebody questions me on this, not only do I say, look around the room you're in and all the things you've traded money for, I would love for you to go sit at a Starbucks. Just sit at a Starbucks and watch the extraordinary amount of exchange movement of money that's happening. And it never disappears. It never goes anywhere. I love when they say that on the stock market. Was lost today. I'm like, it wasn't lost. It moved. It moved. It's not what it go into the ether and disappear. No, it moved. People sold it. People bought it. That's what stop with this lie. And so I think as soon as we can start to understand we're playing into this massive exchange of love on the planet, it's like, oh, I don't even care. Did you want to work with me? That'd be fantastic. Let's get that going. Great. And we're going to get you all healed up and we're going to make that work. And I'm going to be able to like put my kids through college and I'm going to go, I have to pay for my daughter's insulin, which is so, I don't even want to talk about that. Right. But like, look at all the things that gets to go take care of because I help somebody get more money in their hands and grow their business. It's so exciting and it's so much fun. And it can be so loving and generous and thoughtful. It never has to be scary.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's like the best. That's the best explanation of sales I think I've ever heard. I'm going to just clip this. I'm going to play it on a repeat when I need some motivation. I'm just going to listen to Sarah's voice. That was amazing. And I think kind of to reiterate, I love that you talk about money because I think when we get to the bottom, like through the layers of when people are uncomfortable with sales, there's a money issue there. There's a relationship with money that has to be healed, discussed, brought to the surface for sure. Mine was that money is finite. That was a big thing for me that I felt that I was taking from, right? It was also how I handled my business, meaning I was so, from watching my mom, just like penny pinch, like everything because she needed to. But I didn't need to. But what I was doing was I was making not only myself crazy, I was making my team crazy because I was like, oh my God, that we lost like $2 today. And like finally someone said, do you think the stress, I think my therapist said this to me, do you think the stress you caused yourself over $2 is worth it? And I think she said at one point, would a 7-figure business owner act like that?
Oh, dang.
And I was like, probably not. But I'm not a 7. And she was like, but you are. And I'm like, I just saw 7-figure business owners as like the white men in the suits.
That's right.
Like, they're like, but you are.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, so you're so right. The other thing that I got from that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is it's kind of how I think about education when I talk to kids about education. Like education gives you choices.
Yes.
It gives you options. So having money gives you options. What do you want to do with that money? Do you want to buy a house? That's fine. Fabulous. Do you want to have another car? Do you want to have material things? Do you want to travel? Do you want to, pay off your student debt? Do you want to donate? And by the way, businesses need money. Okay. If you are not getting money in your business, I'm sorry to say this, you don't have a business, you have a hobby.
Right. Right.
If you are not exchanging for your service. And if you have a hobby, you can't grow. And if you can't grow, you can't help more people. And if you can't help more people, right, then you're like at capacity. Why shouldn't we want to help more people? So I think that was wonderful that you explained it in a way of like this energy exchange too. And that it's like you can't, what's that quote? Like you can't receive with a closed fist or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Kind of like something.
Yeah. And I like to say the exchange has to be congruent.
Right.
Right. It has to match, right? That's why when somebody totally overcharges you and you feel sick to your stomach, that's because it doesn't work, right? It doesn't match. But the same happens. Listen, people, when you undercharge and you feel like crap when you're
100%.
working with somebody. It's got to
100%.
match. And so if you're worried about calling it money or whatever, if that's still a hang up, one, you just got something to heal. You just wrote something down on your list, right, guys? You wrote something down on your list. You're going to go heal, right? Like, oh, of course I can have money. That's a wonderful thing, right? So we want to work on healing that. Then the next thing is to say, no, I want to make sure the exchange of love matches. I want to make sure the exchange of energy that I'm pouring into this human being to help them heal is matched by the amount of love that's coming back at me. It just happens to be in the form of money right now. And who knows, we might change that and it's bananas in the future. I don't know, but right now it's money, right? And that's the other thing is you can release the idea that it has to be money. What it is a matched, equal, congruent exchange of energy. And right now, the way our society is built, it's money.
Right.
And so
it could be NFTs in the future, crypto.
Yeah,
if it makes you feel better that like some random thing in the ether out there is going to be the exchange now, you can call it whatever the hell you want.
Sure. Totally.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll exchange paper hearts. I don't know. But right now it's money. Yeah. Right? And that can help too. If you can imagine it as other things, it's helpful.
Yeah. I loved it. You said too, because this is what I have gotten to and I try to help people get to is like, it's almost like offering someone pigs in a blanket. Like you kind of said like, hey, this is what I can offer. I'm confident that I can help you get better from your back pain or XYZ. And this is what it costs to work with me. What questions can I answer for you? Yeah. And that's it. Like you disconnect from the sale, right? Of like, so if you walk up to at a party and I say to you, hey, Sarah, would you like some pigs in the blanket? And you're like, yeah, not right now. Like, I'm not going to get pissed. Maybe I'll come back 10 minutes later and be like, hey, do you want pigs in the blanket? And you'll be like, now I do.
Actually, I do now. I'm hungry. Yeah. Or
so,
whatever.
Yeah. So how do you work with women then to get to that point where they can disconnect the emotional, like that emotional feeling of if they're saying no to me, not to my offer?
Yeah, no, you are not your business.
Correct.
It's the most important thing. It's the most important thing I teach. And I say it over and over and over and over. And the best way to get at that actually, because you can hear me say that, you're like, yeah, whatever, Sarah, it feels like it's me when they say no. Like, and I totally get that. Like, oh my gosh, I feel you on that. Right. But the best way to sort of get at that is when you're faced with something is to think of the business as its own entity, because it is, and ask yourself, what does the business need me to do right now? And the second you do that, it's like not personal anymore because you want to serve your business, right? You started it to serve people. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, the business actually needs me to make sure the newsletter goes out because we have something that's coming up. I want to make sure people know about it. Oh, and the business would need me to follow up with that person from yesterday. And the business would need me to make sure that I raise the price on that one offer because that actually felt like crap the last time we ran it. That didn't work. And for sometimes, the business needs you to raise the price again, not to be greedy or selfish, but because people aren't listening. And this happened with one of my very, very first clients. I'm so proud of her. I just love her to bits. Her name is Tasha Blasi. You can find her online everywhere. She founded the FU Project, which stands for Fertilitites Unite. But when you can't get pregnant, you feel like screaming FU at everybody. I was like, you are the funniest person ever. She came to me. She was an executive at a country music station. And she's like, get me out of here. And I was like, okay, so tell me about your life. What do people come to you for? What problems do you solve? And she had gone through 10 rounds of IVF to have her 2 children. And had secondary infertility, right? She had the first one after round 2 and it took 8 to get the second one, right? So she experienced all of it. And she had been a science high school teacher. She's gorgeous. Her sister's an actor. She's great on film. I was like, you need to create a course and tell people how to get pregnant. She's like, oh my God, I could tell them how to not make the shots hurt and what happened, who the best clinics are and where they should go and how to like distract themselves. And the two, like she went nuts, like just, all right. I was like, this is amazing. I said, how many women call you right now? It wasn't her job yet. I go, how many people call you right now? She's like, honestly, 4 or 5 a week. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, people all over the country are like, you need to talk to Tasha. And I'm like, for free? She's like, yeah. I go, how many of them listen to you? She's like, I don't know. How many of them are pregnant? Maybe 20%. I'm like, okay. Could you get them all pregnant? She's like, oh yeah, I totally could. I was like, okay. So we built a course on how to go through IVF not want to throw yourself out of a window. Right? I mean, it was like, how do you do this? Like, faster and with less pain, which is if you can make something faster with less pain, you've got a business, right? Because people will always pay to make something faster and to have it be less painful. So we put this together and I could not get her to charge more than $300 for it. I was like, Tasha, you are giving them a human. Like this is a baby. Like you can't put a price on that. And each round of IVF is thousands and thousands of dollars. If you can save them from 2 of those, you're saving them thousands. Like she wouldn't do it. It took about 2 years. And all of a sudden, when she raised her prices, and I don't know what that price is now, but I know she makes around 6 figures a month. At this point, she's retired her husband. They've moved across the country. She has her kids with her all the time. She is a 100% success rate. Every single one of her clients is pregnant. Do you know why? Because the price is congruent with what she's giving them. And when it wasn't, they didn't listen to her and they did not get pregnant. Now, even though her service, and I don't know what the price is, but it's thousands, right? It's to get all of her knowledge, all of her expertise, her 100% success rate, right? To get all of that is going to save her clients thousands of dollars in rounds of IVF. I was like, dude, people would pay for this all day long.
Totally.
Like, this is still an extraordinary deal. Like, this is amazing. And once she got that, that's when the success rate went up. And so you guys, you've got to listen. And you guys know this, especially in the wellness industry, you've got to listen to your gut. When you feel creepy when you're selling, sometimes it's because you're way too low, and what you're telling that person, what you're coaching that person through, what you're teaching that person is not going to land because they don't care, because they're not invested.
Correct.
And that's not to be tricky. That's not to increase your revenue. That is to make sure the price is congruent with what you're offering. And her $300 is not congruent with a baby in your arms. It's just not. It doesn't match, especially if you're willing to pay all that money to go through IVF.
Yeah.
It's like, I almost see it now. I've never told her this, but I kind of see it like as insurance on the IVF.
Exactly.
If you want to do this in one round, let's make sure you do this in one. I mean, I don't know. That is one of my favorite examples. And I love it because she's such a unique business, right? Like, most people don't have a business like that. So I love to talk about it because I'm not like, well, the other business coach said, like, that is such a unique, specific example, but everyone can get it. Especially anyone who's a mother, right? Like, you can really like dial right in there and get that information out and go, oh, I see. I see why that didn't work. Yeah.
Well, that story is amazing for two reasons. Number one, it proves that you can make a business out of anything.
Anything.
Okay. So this was someone's personal story. She learned a lot from it, and now she's sharing that. So you can make a business about anything. Number two, the transformation is in the transaction, right? A lot. And so I am a big believer, and like in the health and wellness industry, there's a lot of that. Oh, get your first session free. I hate that because I don't think people are invested in it. And I totally agree. I don't think they're going to listen as much, right? They will, that old saying, like skin in the game. It's more like, it's like, I wouldn't go get, I saw this ad for something that was like Botox for like $49. And I was like, who's letting someone stick needles in their face for $49? Like, I'm thinking like, the value there. But that was an amazing story because of those two things. And do you believe, I am a little woo-woo too. So I also believe when you have kind of like rectified whatever it is, like gotten in alignment with your pricing, and you put it out there and you're like, this is it. I feel good about it. The universe conspires in our favor. And I 100%. Think that like when you go all in, I've heard this from, and maybe you've heard this too, like women that come into our coaching programs, like when they finally decide to invest the money, within 30 days are like, oh, my schedule is like full. Booked. I'm like, what'd you do? And they're like, I don't really know. I'm like, you know what? You bet on yourself. And now the universe is saying, oh, the universe is not fighting with you saying, I want more money, but I won't do this. I want more money, but I won't do this. So now you're saying, no, I want a more successful business, and I'm investing in myself to do that. And now the universe is like, oh, you're not pushing back on me anymore. Okay, here you go. Like, do you believe that?
100%. Yeah. And I think we've all experienced that, right? I mean, it's like,
I
like The Secret and all, but I don't love the part where they don't talk about action enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what that transaction is. It's taking action and saying, I'm in, I got it. I'll do whatever I need to do, obviously with integrity. I'll do whatever I need to do to make sure I'm moving forward. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And for me, I have to say it did help me with my pricing when I also started investing in myself, in my higher ticket programs. And now when I say to someone, oh, this is what it costs to work with me, I say it like, do you want a pig in a blanket? Like, it's Wagyu beef, by the way. It's really good. So, well, I would love for you to share with our audience, like what it is where they can find you and how they can get in touch with you. So if they want to reach out to you and learn about your programs, where can they do that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So you can find me at sarahwalton.com, and that's Sarah with an H. And it's Walton, like the family on TV if you're old, or like
The
the Walmart family
Waltons.
if you're not. Yeah, so sarahwalton.com. You can find me there. And my signature course is the Sales Mastermind. People are loving this course. It's a 6-month intensive group coaching program. It is not an online course. It's with me going through every single aspect of sales, sales pages, sales calls, copy, your unique selling proposition, what to do when someone can't afford you, confidence, leadership skills, like you name it, we talk about it, plus just flat out coaching, which I love. You can also find me on the Game On Girlfriend podcast, of course, and on YouTube. Every week I turn on my phone and heaven help us, we never know what I'm going to say. That's called Sarah Uncut. So you could grab that. And, specifically for this conversation, I don't always talk about this, but I do have my money mindset course. And so, the URL for that is the Money Mindset course. And there's a free class you can sign up for there to kind of taste the course, see if it's something that would work for you. But I think if you've enjoyed this conversation, if that's something that's really interesting for you, you might want to go check that out. I think it's been, as people have talked to me about it through the years, they're like, Sarah, that course is so helpful. And it is, you kind of study at your own pace and really dive it into your business. And so that's something I would recommend as well.
That's awesome. We are going to link all of that up in the show notes. We'll post it on social. And then if you guys are listening to this, screenshot it, tag Sarah. Everyone just likes to know that what they said resonated with you. And Sarah, I would love to have you back because I think this was like such a great conversation.
Anytime, Krista. Anytime. Awesome. I'm all yours.
Awesome. I love it. And go listen to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. It's a great, great, great podcast as well. And thanks so much, Sarah. I hope you'll be back for us. And until next time, my friends, bye for now.